So we're streaming live today, both on Facebook, my business page on Facebook, Belize Islands Real Estate, on my YouTube channel, and then through the Zoom platform here. So I'd like to welcome everybody. Any time today to put together any slides to sort of back up some of the information I'm going to be presenting, but I just wanted to go ahead and get this out there because so many of you are asking me about Belize, saying, how is the situation there with the coronavirus? What's happening? Is there a massive outbreak? What's the government doing? And the government has taken actually very, very strong measures to limit the spread. There are a few cases there, but I'm going to be getting into that here in a little bit. I got it a little bit early just to make sure that all the devices are working and that everybody that wanted to could have time to log on and get going. But I'm going to be talking a lot about Belize real estate today and how this coronavirus pandemic is going to affect both Belize itself as a country, but also the real estate investments there. Many of my clients have been with me for years, some of them for 15, 18 years. We've been working together, helping them to find properties, invest in Belize. I have people right now that today are looking at putting properties under contract, and they're wondering if this is a better option, or they should be doing something else with their money, or not buying at all. And so I thought what I should do then is just look at some of the experience that I've had in Belize, living and working there for the past 18 years, and what I see happening now with the coronavirus. And this big scare that we have as it moves through the entire world, and as it affects country after country, it's going to affect different countries in different ways. It's going to affect different neighborhoods in different ways, different cities in different ways, different populations and cultures. And when you get right down to it, each person is going to be affected financially by this or not, depending on how they have themselves set up. Several of my clients have multiple streams of income. They've set themselves up with different ways to provide the income for them and their families, whether it be through real estate or the stock market or a business or something that they do. So I'll go into that a little bit today and really take a deep dive into the Belize real estate market. So if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in. I'm on Zoom here, so if you have any questions, go ahead and just pop in the questions there. Also my Facebook Live and on my YouTube channel. So as the questions come in, I'll try to scroll and see those. And let me just see if I can pull up the chat feature here. All right. Set, don't know how to see those. Very good. All right. So I'm just going to give everybody a little bit a time to log on. Again, I'm early. I said I was going live at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And let me see, it's probably, we probably got another 13 minutes. So maybe I can just go through some of the questions then that have been coming in that I'm going to be addressing. First one is, how are my property investments in Belize going to fare during this pandemic? That's a good question to ask. I'm invested in land. Should I sell the land? Should I hold it now? What's going on in this area, particular different areas that people have bought property in? Another question came in, said, I own several condos in Belize, on the island of Ambergris Caye and in Placencia. What is your opinion as to how these two areas will fare as the pandemic passes through? It's a good question, so I'll answer that today. Many of you are asking about the return on your investment, how I think it's going to perform over the next 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. Of course, a lot depends on exactly what you purchased, when and how, and what area it's in. So we're going to get into that a little bit. We're going to talk about the slowdown in the market. Do we foresee a large slowdown in tourism with all this happening? That's going to be a good question. I'm going to dive into that quite a bit. We're going to talk about rental units, pre-construction projects, and some of them are going to get hit pretty hard during this difficult time. And I'm going to explain why are some going to get hit harder than others, and also some of the projects that are going to go through just fine, and what makes them different. And so as you look at investing in the future, you can compare the two. You might see 2 or 3 different projects, and you might say, this project looks better to me, but this one is, I'm not quite sure about. So we want to give you some ways of analyzing the different projects, so you can see exactly what you can invest in the future. Some other questions here said, I owe on my property in Belize. What happens if I make a payment. Okay, so we're going to cover that. We're going to cover short-term versus long-term rentals. Right now, the tourism market is going to be taking a hit. So some of those short-term rentals are going to take a big hit right now, especially in the next month or two. We're going to talk about that compared to long-term rentals and how there's a big difference in the way they operate in Belize and exactly how you might be able to take advantage of that. Promises of future development. We're gonna talk about that. Some development that may be put on the back burner now. We're not quite sure yet, but we're pretty sure some of these projects that have been going on, maybe dragging a bit, are going to be dragging even more. Some projects are fully funded, so they're going to move right ahead. Probably unfazed in this. We'll talk about those. We'll talk about what you should do right now if you're a seller. So if you have a property that's been on the market for a while, we're going to talk about maybe some things you can do to help move it along. And we're going to talk about some things that you might consider if you're thinking about selling right now, but you're not quite sure if the timing is right. We're going to give you a top 2 or 3 things to think about there. And also we're going to have some thoughts for if you're looking at buying now. So we're going to cover all those different areas. We're going to talk about financing. Financing is a big thing right now. You know, in the United States, we have the banks dropping their interest rates. Of course, right now it's hard to get a loan on anything. You know, banks aren't going to loan out for a while. It's hard to get a deal done in the U.S. right now. But in Belize, it's very interesting how the financing works. So we're going to take a look at some of those different ways. We're also going to take a look at the down payments and closing costs, how those have been affected by this or might be affected. And we're going to talk about, again, the United States and Canada as a whole and how different pockets are going to be affected differently. We're going to take a look at 2008 and how those. Hey, John, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, fellas?
Good. Just doing a live stream here on my Facebook for my Facebook followers. Live stream on my YouTube, and then of course we got the we got the Zoom here starting up here in a few minutes. So I didn't officially start yet. I'm just kind of going over some of the questions I'm going to be talking about.
Sounds good.
Yep, very good. Awesome. Yeah, so we're going to talk about, let's see, so we talked about future promises, developments, pre-construction versus fully funded projects, rental units versus long-term rentals. Let's see, property values themselves. So we're going to talk about those property values themselves, where they're at today, some properties that will absolutely see a drop in value and why that is, and then others that won't drop so much. In fact, others might even increase a bit depending on what area they're in. So we'll give that a shout. Let's see. Also, yeah, we're going to talk about the restaurants because right now the restaurants in the U.S. are taking a big hit, and we're going to compare how restaurants and bars operate in the U.S. compared to how they operate in Belize, and look at the areas of Belize that will get hit hard and areas that won't, and what the difference is on that. Because a lot of you have been asking about people that you know at different restaurants, different waiters, waitresses, how everyone's doing. Yeah, so as your questions come in, just go ahead and pop them down. There's a chat box on each of these. So on my YouTube, Facebook, and Zoom, we have a chat window. So feel free to share your questions, ask questions if you want, and we'll go from there.
I'm gonna switch to my my laptop so that way if I have questions I'll tell you.
Sounds good. All right, thanks, John. Very good. All right. Oop, I do have to start recording this at some point. And let's see. I'm going to hit the record button. So how's everyone doing on Facebook today? If you have any questions, if you're tuning in live today, go ahead and type your name in the chat box below. Any questions you have? If you're in Belize, let me know that too. Maybe we can ask you a few questions, how things are going on the island. Right now I'm in France, Strasbourg, France, in the Grand Est, the east of the country. Unfortunately, this is the hardest hit area of France. Well, actually, Paris has more cases, but as far as population density goes, we've been hardest hit. So Steph and I are staying inside, not leaving the house. We have enough groceries, wine, all the necessities of life here. So we're actually doing quite well. This is our, I think it's our 15th day in the home, and we're doing pretty good. But anyway, yep. I hope you're doing good wherever you are in the world today. And let me try to get this up. All right. Never done so. Excellent. All right. Steve says, wish I was in the rainforest away from everyone. Yeah, absolutely, Steve. You know, a rainforest or maybe just an isolated hut on the beach somewhere. Outside of Ambergris Caye, you have all these little islands out there in the on the atolls, And it would be not bad to spend a month or two at one of those, as long as you had enough food and stuff to keep you busy. Ray, good to see you online today, buddy. Appreciate that. Sorry if I'm acting a little goofy. I'm just trying to get all this set up so I can see everyone. Yeah, good to see you online, Ray. Good. And actually, I'm glad to see you're on because I wanted to talk a little bit about IRA investments because people are going to be investing in different ways now, and depending on how hard they've been hit and what they want to do moving forward to protect themselves against another scenario like this. So glad to have you on today. Very good. Let me just check the time, guys. I don't mean to stall too much, but I did want to give everybody opportunity to get on by 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here. And again, if you have any questions, go ahead and email those to me or put those in the chat boxes below or the comment section below. All right, so all right. All right. Well, let me just start. It's about 5 minutes to 11. So I think I'll just start by giving everyone just a very brief overview of how things are going on Ambergris Caye. Obviously, I'm not there myself. Steph and I are in France, but I'm still very well connected. Talk to my people there daily to see how things are going, and apparently it's going quite well. They have only 2 confirmed cases on the island of Ambergris Caye, a woman and her mother. They've been self-isolating for a while. And so right now there are no other confirmed cases. However, the island of Ambergris Caye is completely locked down. Nobody's coming in or out for 30 days. They're taking this very, very seriously. And actually, if you've been to Ambergris Caye before, you know how important this is because number one, it's a small island. It's 25 miles long by 4 miles wide at its widest. It only has between 22 and 25,000 inhabitants, and it's an extremely close-knit community. Many families live together. They live close together. There's a lot of socializing. Not a lot of parties or socializing takes place inside. It almost always takes place outside at the beaches, at the bars, at the clubs, in football games and things like that. So in Belize, it's extremely important that they protect themselves against any further spread of this because it could be devastating to the island. The island just doesn't have the medical equipment there to deal with a major outbreak. Now, it does have good medical services. For example, in the 11 years that I lived there full time, I've seen people get hurt sometimes really bad. There was a guy in front of Victoria House, just 100 yards away from us, who got hit by a boat, had his leg cut off, actually cut off. Other people have had heart attacks, strokes, all sorts of things. And the medical services on Ambergris Caye are very good as far as taking care of things like that, being able to serve as a first responder, provide medical assistance right away, and then get you over to the private hospitals in Belize City. They do that by charter flight. And so I've seen some bad accidents happen, bad sicknesses happen on the island. For instance, my wife woke up with extremely bad stomach pains one morning, and about 6 o'clock a.m. and just excruciating. And at 7 o'clock, we flew her over to the mainland of Belize. And by 7:17, so I looked at my watch, at 7:17, she was in the hospital bed with an IV in her arm, and they were running tests. So very, very good medical care. Another reason I bring all this up is because on the island of Ambergris Caye, they just don't have large hospitals with lots of beds and lots of respirators and things like that to care for an outbreak. So it's very important that they protect themselves. So I'm so glad to see nobody's coming in, nobody's going off. Just yesterday, they confirmed another case in Belize City. There's one case in Belize City, again, a business person who had traveled from the States back to the mainland. He's been in self-isolation. So that's 3 cases now in Belize. But the entire country state is shut down. The Prime Minister, Dean Barrow, announced a state of emergency. And so that's all good news. They're taking this very, very seriously. They got on it right away. They're not waiting. And I think it's very important. So yeah, that's the update on that. It's going well. I talked to several of my clients and friends who are living there. Everything's shut down. The stores are stocked with plenty of food. There's no problem there, and they're actually just doing quite well. And hopefully things like this will go on through. So a couple questions have been coming in as far as how the virus might affect property values, or how the buying and selling might be altered in a way, from starting from now and moving forward. So I put together a list of 14 different points. Sometimes they don't flow well. They're in random order because they just, as they came to my head, I put them down on the paper. And again, I didn't have any time to make any slides. But what I'll do is, as I cover each point, if you have a question on that, go ahead, put it in the chat, raise your hand, I'll call on you, and we'll go from there. But first of all, people are asking how it's going to be affected in the future. In other words, as a destination itself. Is it going to get hit hard economically? Is it going to see a decline in its quality and its value? Because sometimes what we've seen in the past, for instance, in 2008 and even before, if an area of this size, a very small size, gets hit hard, then it's very difficult to recover. It can take many years to recover. There's a couple things to know about Ambergris Caye. First of all, if you haven't been there before, you might not realize this, but Ambergris Caye is not a budget destination, not by any means. It caters to the little bit more higher end traveler. It's not a cheap place to get to. Well, first of all, Belize itself isn't cheap to fly to. I mean, prices are dropping down now from the U.S. because you have so many different hubs and airlines servicing it. But first of all, you have to fly to Belize City, and then you have to fly from Belize City to Ambergris Caye. And that round trip on Tropic Air is about $155. So if you got a family of four, mom, dad, and two kids coming down, you're paying your international airfare into Belize, and then you're paying $600 just to get to the island. Then once you're there, you notice if you looked around at hotel prices, we have very few hotels on Ambergris Caye. I think we only have 3 actual hotels. All the rest are condo projects, condo hotels. And so you get a 1-bedroom condo or a 2-bedroom condo. And that means complete with bedroom, living room, kitchen, bathroom, full on with a pool. And those don't come cheap. I think our average nightly rental rate on Ambergris Caye is something like $250 a night or $275 a night. So again, when you look at it as a destination, it doesn't have budget travelers going to it. It doesn't have spring breakers. It doesn't draw that type of crowd. It doesn't even draw the backpackers. The backpackers go to Key where it's much, much cheaper. So because of that, as an example, in 2008, when we sorry, just 1 minute here. In 2008, when the crash happened, we were actually pretty scared. All of us real estate guys were like, what's going to happen now? And number one, what we didn't see was a slowdown in tourism. Again, Ambergris Caye is a very small boutique-ish style place. It caters to people that scuba dive. People that scuba dive normally have a little bit more money. They normally spend a little bit more money when they travel, staying at the nice resorts. They don't mind paying a higher flight fee. And so we saw tourism actually didn't take much of a dip in 2008, 9, and 10. That held pretty strong. And I don't think we're going to see much of a dip in tourism now because, again, people that aren't able to come to the island now, let's say they had flights booked this month or next month, which many of my clients did. They didn't just write off Belize. This wasn't just a vacation. This was a destination. People come to Belize not just on a whim, but they want it as a destination. And so people are already. I just talked to a hoteler. How do I say that? Person who owns a hotel in Belize, and he said that right now they're getting bookings for Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving. People that couldn't come now are going to come over the holidays then, because what happens is at spring break now, a lot of the teachers and professors who have off school will come to the island. And so I don't see a big drop in tourism happening because of this. In fact, I see pent-up demand. When you look at the tourism numbers that I give in my other webinars, we've had consistent double-digit growth rates in tourism for the past 10 years. That's every single year, at least 10%, sometimes as high as 50% growth year after year. So it's 15% this year plus, okay, so you get it. So I don't think we're going to see a drop in tourism, but what we are going to see now is a lag in tourism, and that's going to result in a situation where we have properties on market for more days than we have now. The reason is tourism is often a leading indicator of sales 12 to 18 months out. A person will often visit Ambergris Caye. They'll fall in love with it. They'll like it. They'll do some research when they're on the island, but it's not until they get home that they really start to dig deep and get the numbers and say, what do I want to buy? What do I want to invest in? And then they have to, save up some money or get some money moved around. So usually, for instance, our peak season is end of December, January, February, March. I hardly make any sales during those months. It's odd. The island's flooded with people. Sales are down. People get home. Then they wait till their tax returns come. So April 15th has to go out of the way. And then as soon as April 15th is done, between April 15th and about July 1st is my peak season as a real estate guy. That's when most of my people buy because they were exposed to it in the early months. They got their finances in order. Start purchasing in May, June, and July timeframe, and then we kind of slow down about September, October again. So what this is going to do, this is taking away a lot of our travels for March and April. These are peak months for us. We're running at about 85% occupancy usually these months, so it takes a lot of people off the island. So I think we're going to see a drop in sales, in the next couple months, just because those tourists weren't on island. So I'll talk about that more in a little bit. Also, Belize draws a lot of repeat guests, you might say. For instance, if you go on TripAdvisor and you look at the dive shops, the dive operators, the fishing guides, all that, you see a lot of people write, a huge percentage write, this is my 5th year using so-and-so, or this is my, 10th time going out with this guy fishing. Because Belize draws this repeat guest more so than any other place. I've had people, come down to Belize again and again each year, where they'll go to, Paris once in their lifetime, and they've done it, or Cancun once and it's done. But because it's a high-end destination and because it gets a lot of repeat business, I think it's going to come out of this pretty well. Also, you got to think about this. Belize Ambergris Caye rather has 2,200 rooms for rent. So that's the entire island between the condos, the hotels, the Airbnbs. You take all those rooms for rent together, and there's 2,200 rooms. That's not many rooms to fill. So for the island to function, for the island to bounce back after this, it just has to find buyers for 2,000 rooms a night. As an example, I was at the Mandalay Bay, Las Vegas, 3 weeks ago at the Grant Cardone 10X Growth Con. And the hotel I stayed at, the Mandalay Bay, had 3,209 rooms. So one hotel, 3,200 rooms, and we have an entire island in Belize with 2,200 rooms, 1,000 rooms less. So it doesn't take much to fill up those rooms. And also when we look at that, we realize that certain parts of the states are going to get just whopped hard in this economy. Certain parts of Canada is going to get whopped hard. It's going to take a lot of money off the table. A lot of people are going to lose money. So you have to look at, say, it's not the entire country that's losing money. It's certain portions are going to lose more than others. And then you come down to the individual city economies and the individual economies, and you think, okay, out of the millions of people in the United States and Canada who are still looking for tropical destinations, who are still looking for a place to retire, a second home, how many of those percentage-wise would we actually have to need for Ambergris Caye to bounce back after this? Not much, not much at all. So let's talk about, let me just kind of go down my list here. I had a question come in. Oh, yeah, you had to reschedule your trip. Yeah, absolutely. So another question was about the restaurants. And this is just interesting tidbit to throw out there because right now I've been following the U.S. news and, the restaurants are getting hit really hard. Obviously, they can't open and serve food and beverage. And it's the same here where we're living here in France. No restaurants, no cafes, nothing. So I'm just eating at home, which is probably healthier. But anyway, the deal is with the economy at Ambergris Caye and why I'm not so worried about it. And yes, it's gonna take a hit because you have all those Belizeans who normally work every day and they work hard to make a living where they're out of work right now. A lot of the restaurant owners I've been talking to are actually paying their workers 75% of their salary, so they have money coming in. And the one thing good about Belizeans that I learned a lot when I'm there is they can get by on very little. They know how to cook cheap but good. They know how to stretch a dollar. They're very good at it. So I'm not so worried about them. And here's what's happening with the restaurants and bars is most restaurant owners, they own their property outright. So the Blue Water Grill, Selly's, all of these other places, all these mom and pop shops, they don't rent those spaces. They own those spaces. They might live on top and have the restaurant on the bottom. And because of the way the banks are situated there, they probably don't have a loan on their property. The banks charge extremely high interest rates in Belize, 10.5 to 12%, and they don't really like giving out money too much. So most of these Belizeans and expats own their properties outright. There's no debt on their properties, and so sure they shut down the restaurants now, but they're not bleeding any money either. They're not having to pay the bank. They're not having to pay a mortgage or pay a lease. The problem that the restaurants are going to have in the U.S. right now is that you take a nice restaurant like in a high-end area of Houston or New York, they're paying a massive amount in property, in just all sorts of expenses. They can't pay those bills. Those restaurants are going to go out of business. Those workers are going to lose their jobs, and those aren't going to come back. So you're going to see a lot of empty storefronts in the United States. The good thing about the restaurants, the storefronts, the tour operators, the clothing sellers on the island of Ambergris Caye, almost all of those are mom and pop shops that are 100% owned, no debt. And so I know that once tourism comes back, they're going to be okay. So I don't have any worries about them. Also, you got to look at the desirability of Ambergris Caye. Through all of this, it's not going to lose its desirability. What made it desirable before and win accolades and awards and draw, the reason why so many branded hotels have come into the market in the past 3 years. We have the Hilton, we have the Wyndham Grand that's being built, we have the Marriott that's being built. All of those came in because they saw there was enough value on the island, enough traffic coming in. Now, some of those projects might be delayed because of this. Obviously, you can't have workers on the job site, and the projects that were counting on sales to complete, I think those are going to be in trouble. I think we're going to have some problems with those. So far I've been talking about some of the good points, some of the positives I've noted, but let me just talk about some of the negatives. Just to be completely honest, is that where I see people getting in trouble now is if they purchased pre-construction properties that weren't 100% funded by the developer or by a bank up front. And what I mean by that is, let's say I'm a developer and I don't have a lot of cash. I'm not fully cashed out. So I might build a 20-unit condo project, but I know that my finishing the project, including the pool and the landscaping and everything turnkey, is going to be dependent on me selling 12 of those units. Well, if I've only sold 6 so far, but I put concrete in the ground and now I'm going vertical, and now I only have 6 units sold and I can only get 25% down or 30% down off those units, now I've just run out of money. I'm not selling any more units. I have no more money left. And now what am I going to do? Because who knows if in the future people are going to want to plop down $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 for whatever I'm building. So they're taking a risk. So what we saw in 2008 happen, and if you've spent any time on island since 2008 driving around by golf cart, you'll see a lot of unfinished projects. And as I was driving people around, people say, what's that? Well, what happened there? Or what happened to this? This exact thing. The developer didn't have the cash to complete the project. He was basing his projections on pre-sales, and when those didn't come, the development folded. They went bankrupt. You still today, you have unfinished condo projects on the island. You have one in the Habaneros area. You have unbuilt villas just behind Barrier Reef. You have unfinished projects. So that's where I'm seeing those of you who bought in those projects, those pre-construction projects, get a hold of your developer right now, see what you can do, see what they're doing, see if they're funded or if they're going to be able to continue, and just be open with them, and ask for an honest answer. And don't accept anything else than an honest answer as far as what's really going on. That's one warning that I always give my clients regarding pre-construction. I'm not so worried about some developers because they have an excellent track record. Some on the island, this is now their 3rd and 4th project, so when they say they're going to do something, don't have so much concern. But some of the smaller ones that have never done a project, they think they have experience because they've done something in the United States or Canada. Be very, very careful with them because you can get in a lot of trouble. You can lose your savings, and really you don't have any recourse because it was nobody's fault in a way. It was just a disaster. 2008 was a disaster. You couldn't see it coming. This is a disaster, worldwide disaster. So be careful with pre-construction properties there. Next question. Will property values drop, stay the same? Yeah, so I wanted to address this because, in the States right now, they're saying, that the value of real estate is going down. The value of real estate only goes down if there's a reason to have it go down. And the same thing with it to go up. Real estate doesn't always go up. It's ridiculous. If I'm going to buy real estate, it's going to go up in value. It doesn't go up in value unless it has a reason to. Let me just mute this person here. All right. Yeah, so it has to have a reason to go up in value. And the reason is, number one, an area gets more desirable. So there's a supply and demand, and it's desirable for a reason. More people are coming there for jobs. There's more happening in the area. There's more growth in an area. For Ambergris Caye, it's a desirable part of Belize. Now, what we saw in 2008, the areas to get hit the hardest were the areas on the mainland that weren't as desirable, but they had a great marketing team put together, and they were doing all these flashy brochures and things. So they were making it look like we're going to build golf courses and marinas, and we're going to do this and that. Well, when 2008 hit, the money dried up, and so did that. And you have a lot of unfinished projects there. Worse than Ambergris Caye, because those areas weren't desirable in the first place. I'll give you an example. In Hopkins, Placencia, all down in the area, it's nice and it's quiet and it's peaceful. It's on the mainland. Some people prefer it over Ambergris Caye. I've been there. I love it as a beautiful place to spend a week, but it is far from the reef. The snorkeling, diving, fishing is much further out. It doesn't have the amount of services and amenities as Ambergris Caye. So when 2008 hit, Placencia got hit hard. It didn't fare well. Ambergris Caye didn't, because it's more desirable. You have the snorkeling, diving, fishing literally at the reef front. So I do see property values where I see them going down is in two different areas. Number one is if the list price is a pie in the sky, someone will buy this, so I'm going to list it for a lot higher than it's worth. And I've seen a lot of those listings here in the past year because people are taking advantage of the incredible stock market run. People are doing well in their businesses. So what I saw is on the East Coast, I saw beachfront properties that were probably worth 400,000, 450, and they were being listed at 750, 850, almost double what the actual market value was. And people were buying them. They were selling because someone out there who wants that property, if they want it bad enough, they don't care if it's 450 or 850. To them, I'll pay 850 because that's where I want to be. So I see those types of properties dropping down into more reasonableness, might say, because people aren't going to be as free with their money now. Where I also see a big drop in property values is if a condo or a home had a lot of extra profit built into the sales price. In other words, a developer could say, I'm building these 2-bedroom, 2-bath condos. The land cost me this. The square footage price cost me this. So I have, let's say, 250,000 into it, but I want to make 250,000 as my profit. So I'm going to list it at 500,000. That's my sales price. That's what I want to get for it. Well, it's sort of an arbitrary number. Like, who says you can even get that doubling the profit? So I think you're going to see a lot of that come down and be more reasonable. So he might take a $100,000 profit on a condo and come out quite well. That's fair for him, fair for the buyer. So that's where I see some property values being readjusted on the island. But those are only the two areas. Number one, if the profit was too high, or if somebody just put a price out there, so you know what, I know I'll get it if I sit on it long enough because I got a great property. Where I don't see properties dropping much in value at all, and this is based on working in Belize since 2003, is prices overall, because they were never overinflated. Because of this, you can't overinflate the price of a property unless you have some really good financing in place. For example, in the States, right now you can get financing, I think, at 2.3% on some deals. So somebody can afford to go out and buy a much bigger house or more expensive house than they sometimes would normally consider if the interest rates were 5, 6, 7%, right? So you can ask more for your house as well. If your house is worth 150 in the States, but all of a sudden these interest rates drop, well, you can get 175 for it, right? 200 for it, doesn't matter. Well, in Belize, we don't have those financing options. Financing in Belize is like this. The Belize bank will loan on a property at 40 to 50% down payment, and that's for everybody. I don't care if you're Bill Gates himself or Leonardo DiCaprio, you're putting 40% down. Interest rates are 10.5 to 12%, so they're extremely high, and the mortgage lender are very low. Sometimes 7 years, 10 years on a property, and that's all they'll do. So it's very hard to ask a lot for a home or a piece of vacant land when you can't even get financing on it because it is very difficult. One, if we ever get financing in Belize, I'm probably going to like 10 times my net worth because people will just be buying left and right if we get good financing. But right now you can't get it. So the only way you can get financing is through sellers, through developers, which I'll go into a little bit. But I think, again, the reason we're going to see prices hold through all this is because number one, they're not overinflated. Number two, it's hard to get financing. And number three, in some of these areas, they're just becoming more and more valuable. Next question. Based on that, if you're looking at any property at all, whether it's a condo, home, island, ask for the recent comps. Just ask your real estate agent, hey, what's sold in the area that is similar to this? Now, sometimes it's hard to get recent comps because one block or two blocks can make a big difference. Whether or not something has access to utilities or services or roads or whatever. So it's not like we have an MLS in Belize, and if we did, it wouldn't even matter. And here's why: each project is so unique, each area is so unique that you can say, well, look, these condos sold for 450. Why is this guy asking 650? It just you can't compare like that. They're completely different properties. I talked about some properties are going to be on the market longer now, which we already had a very long lead time, a fairly long lead time on most properties. A property can sit there for 60 days, 3 months, 6 months. I've had properties sit there for a year. And the reason for that is because, again, with only 2,000 hotel rooms on the island, even when we're packed out, we don't have that many people flowing through every week, right? So we have a high season, low season. We have people coming through, but only a percentage of those people want to buy property, and only a percentage less of those people want to buy this exact lot or exact condo. So where you see things sitting in the market quite a long time are condos, 2 and 3 bedroom condos that are fully turnkey, because normally those are the highest price point real estate that we have, and those sometimes take a long time to move. Land can move a little quicker if it's in a good area and if the seller is willing to offer some financing on it. So let me address this regarding financial returns for those of you who have invested in Belize strictly for the financial returns. So some of you have invested with me who don't even like Belize. You don't like tropical weather. You hate the sand. You don't like the water. You're more of a cold weather destination type of person. But you've invested in Belize, buying condos either with your personal money or your IRA money, or you've invested in homes or syndications or vacant land just for the investment. So now, what do? Well, first of all, let me address those who have rental units. So if you own a condo or a single family home, and you had that in some sort of rental pool, most likely right now you're renting by the night because that's the highest level of return that you could get is renting by the night to tourists. That's going to go away for right now. I don't think that's going to bounce back for probably at least 4 to 6 months. Next, by high season, if this doesn't have a rebound, if it doesn't have a rebound, we're going to be okay. If it does have a rebound, your returns are going to be also just wiped out next year. So no doubt about that. So don't plan on making any money if you're in any sort of rental pool right now, renting your unit out, renting your home on Airbnb. You're not going to make any money. Now, the reason a lot of my investors do that is because what they can charge by the night is way more, of course, than they can get by the month. For example, if you charge by the night, let me just give you an example. You have a $500,000 condo at Grand Caribe, and you get $350 a night. Well, it's $350. There's a 70-30 split, so you're making 70% of $450, $500 or $400 a night, and that might be rented maybe 50% of the time. So you just do the calculations at the end of the month. After you pay your utilities and your insurance and your HOA fees, you're left with X number of dollars. Well, that's all going to go away. I see that being hit really, really hard. Same thing if you own an Airbnb, single family home. I think it's going to be very difficult now for you to make any money in 2020. You're just going to be able to hold your own. But where there is a huge void in the market, and it's been like this since 2003 when I moved there, is long-term rentals. Many people are looking to come down for the high season. They want a 6-month rental, a 3-month rental, a 4-month rental. And I tell them there is nothing. In fact, right now, if you were to go on all the websites and try to find a home or a condo that you can rent for 6 months, it does not exist, because people that have a place to rent, they want the nightly rental rate. They want that tourist dollar. They're not going to get that now. So what they could do though is they could switch over and to do long-term rentals. And by long-term, by Belizean law, that means 6 months or more. So you have to rent at least a 6-month lease. Now you might have somebody come to you and say, you know what, I don't want 6 months. I just want 4 months. Well, have them sign a 6-month lease anyway. We know it's going to be a lot cheaper for them to sign a 6-month lease and pay for 6 months and only use it for than to try to find something that charges by the night. And so right now there's a lot of people that want to spend 4 or 6 months a year over the winter break or winter seasons, and they cannot find a place to rent. So for those of you who have Airbnbs, apartments, things like that, see if it's possible, and you got to talk with your management company on this, to see if it's possible to convert into only doing long-term rentals. And you can charge quite a bit. For example, in Royal Palms, right now in this climate, you could probably get $2,000 a month for a 6-month rental. And there is no management split on that. They pay their own utilities, and you just pay your insurances and your taxes, which are probably $200 a year. So take that nightly rental mindset, switch it over, do long-term rentals, at least for the foreseeable future. And I think that's a better way to make money. And plus, it's a lot less hassle. For those of you who are running Airbnbs in Belize, it can make some money, but it can be a full-time job. Responding to clients and questions and setting things up and check-in, check-ins, check-in, check-outs, all that. So it can be a difficult. Keep your finance, keep your cash. Okay. So for buyers right now, what advice would I have for buyers? I think the financial advice I have for all buyers is what I've been hearing from everyone is try to keep as much cash as you have in your bank. Now's not the time, I don't think, to be writing big checks unless you come across a screaming deal in Belize where maybe there's a fire sale where a guy has to sell because he's lost everything in the States and now he's 25 cents of the dollar type thing, which we don't normally get, but it could happen. But otherwise, keep your cash and see if you can get into a condo home or a piece of land with as little money down as possible. And that's what I suggest, because that way you reduce the risk yourself, but you're still able to invest in something. So if you find somebody who has a piece of land or a condo, and they're asking for 25% down, try to get it to 15 or 10, and just try to work with them on that, because that way you keep more money in your pocket. You can ride out this storm longer, but you're still able to lock something in Belize. And right now, to be honest, I would avoid all large purchases in Belize. And I hate to say that because it's nice to knock down some of those big boys. It definitely pads the bank account. But right now, I don't know if I would do that. And even if you did have that kind of cash, I might scale back the purchase. If you're looking at a $500,000 condo right now, why do you need that? Why go for that? What does that serve? If you have it, you can write the check, no problem. But what good does that do if you and your family could get by just as well for something that's $250 or $300 or $350? Keep that others in the bank, or do this: split up the investment. Go with a smaller home or a smaller condo for personal and family use, but then invest in vacant land in up and coming areas. Secret Beach, up by Habaneros, Punta Azul, all those different subdivisions that are up and coming. Maybe take a small amount of money and invest in those. A little bit more about personal economies, because this is something I also learned in 2008, is that, when you watch the news is the news for the entire country of the United States. So they're going to report on big 35,000 foot view numbers, how this economy is doing, how this stock is doing, how this industry is doing, the car industry, the restaurant industry. But they're just going to give an overview. But what we found is that does not apply to every single person. It's not at a personal level. The personal economies of people are vastly different than the national economy. And we got clients right now that are coming down, or they're not coming down to Belize, but they're buying properties in Belize because their personal economy is just fine. And so what we're going to see going through this is that, again, when you look at Ambergris Caye being such a small island, I added up today the number of beachfront properties I have at Secret Beach in North. I think I only have 7 beachfront properties, and that's it. Starting in January, since January 1st, I've sold 8 of them, 8 or 9 properties, 8 properties at Secret Beach, and then one at Costa del Sol. I think he's on. Congratulations, Ray. So I sold 9 beachfront properties. Right now I have 8 left. And if I scoured the rest of the real estate guys' websites, I think Max has one or two, and maybe Amanda at Sunrise has one or two. Let's say there's double that. Let's say there's 16 beachfront properties on the entire West Coast. How many buyers are we actually looking for out of the entire United States and Canada population? Not that many. And not everybody's broke at this time. Not everybody's going to be broke. There's going to be 16 people that want beachfront that have enough to buy those properties. So congratulations. Yeah, you too. So yeah, and even dropping down, those of you who are looking for, let's say, $45,000 properties, those who can afford $45,000 properties, there's millions of people who can still do that right now. Not everybody's suffering. So again, when you look at that, I think as a micro economy in Belize or on Ambergris Caye, we're actually going to come through quite well. Also, I wanted to talk about this. For those of you who have already purchased property and you owe money on it, so you're making payments to a developer, to maybe a bank in Belize, or to maybe a personal mortgage holder, at this time, it's really important that you communicate with them as far as how you're doing. If you're able to make your full payment, if your business hasn't been affected, that's fine. Go ahead and make your full payment. Otherwise, it just delays your payments elsewhere. But if for some reason this has really affected you, just know that the developer or personal mortgage holder or bank does not want that property back. It's going to cost them money to market and sell it again. They don't want to see you lose it. You've already invested a lot of money into it. They're going to work with you on this. In fact, what I've been hearing some do is if you're actually in a good position right now, then contact your mortgage holder or your bank or your developer and say, look, I've just come into an extra $2,400 here this month. What if I give this to you, but you knock another 50% off my bottom line? So if I give you an extra payment this month of $2,400 because I just got this incentive, will you knock another $1,200 off the bottom line? And I've heard of some developers and mortgage holders doing this. Say, sure, you know what? Or prepaying. Some are going with the prepayment route. If you pay me 12 months in advance, I'll knock down your interest rate by a point, or I'll knock down half the amount. So if you pay me $12,000 this year in payments, I'll reduce it by another 3 or 4, and that could work for you. But if you can't make a payment, if you've been laid off, if you're having any sort of problems, get a hold of your mortgage holder, see what you can do. They don't want you to lose that property. Everybody's been affected, and we're going to make sure everybody still has that dream of keeping their dream alive in Belize. A couple more things in here. Questions came in. Let's see if I have any questions coming up. Let me just check my, first of all, my Zoom. Anybody that's on the Zoom call have any questions right now for me? I have a question from John. Are there credit checks on mortgages in Belize? No. So here's the deal on that. In Belize, there are no credit reports ran. There's no credit checks, and there are no reporting to the IRS or any other agency in Belize or Canada. And Belize does not have the requirement that any of this has to be reported. So, for example, even those with really bad credit scores, you can have no credit. You can just have filed for bankruptcy last year, and you can buy a property in Belize. That's not a problem at all. And also, if for those of you who have to default, and I'm sorry, I've defaulted myself on properties. It's not fun. It hurts. But I had back in 2009, there was a property that I had to default on. I didn't want to, but I did. But I did it and just moved on. That didn't affect my credit report in the States. That was a Belize deal. Lost a bunch of money. Oh well, I made it back. But anyway, it didn't affect my credit score in Belize or in the United States. So hopefully that answers your question, John. Here's another question. The land, you asked for the land sale price. Would the price stay firm or be dropped? Yeah, right now I'm seeing firm prices for everything. And then another reason that prices don't drop much is because most properties in Belize, again, because of this financing issue, are owned free and clear. So the condos, the homes, the vacant lands, those are all free and clear deals. So if a person needs to sit on those for a while, they're not normally in a rush to sell. Where we did find somebody in a rush to sell is after 2008, and people were trying to get money together to pay for kids' college. We saw people dropping prices to raise some money for that, a little bit of money to live on, but not an overall big drop. Right now, I think a lot of kids are going to be choosing online colleges even more. So maybe that's not going to be the case anymore. So any more questions? When do you think flights will resume? Good question, Christine. So with resuming of flights, right now, I think everything is going to be shut down at least 60 days. Belize is shut down 30 days right now. I think it's going to be shut down longer than that. I don't see flights being resumed until the scare goes away and until people are absolutely certain that this virus will not get down to Belize. What we're hoping is with some warmer weather, with some sunshine, we're going to see some drop in this drastically. But right now, it's anybody's guess. It's anybody's guess as to when flights will be allowed back in. Even for myself to get home to see family in Michigan. And two, you got to think about too. Like right now, even if I could fly back from France to Michigan, I'd probably have to self quarantine for 14 days. We don't know. It's kind of difficult in a tourism industry like Belize. How can you tell somebody my borders are open, but you need to come down and quarantine for 14 days before you can go out to restaurants and beach bars and things like that? So again, I think Belize tourism industry is going to get hit really hard here for the next 2, 3, 4 months. It's going to take a whooping. But the good news is I think it's going to bounce back. It's not going to last for very long. Sean says, send me the fire sale. I haven't come across any right now, Sean. To be honest, I tend to clean up myself. I'm a little bit cash heavy right now, and that's on purpose. I didn't see the pandemic coming, absolutely not. But I did see a little bit of a restructuring in the market, and so I got my bank account topped off. My own investments are topped off, and so right now I'm also looking for some good deals. It wasn't like that in November. November I was land rich, cash poor, but excuse me. Right now I am looking. So if I have any Belizeans or expats on island right now who have any fire sales, let me know. And if I have anything left, I'll pass it off to Sean and the others who might be looking. But to be quite honest, I don't see a lot coming on the market as a fire sale. I just don't. Especially not in a good area. You might be able to find in rough areas or in really undeveloped areas where there's no desire. Some that's way out there, too far. I see those maybe dropping a bit, but otherwise not so much. You got to think too. The people that buy property in Belize, they're probably pretty well set off in the United States. They probably have a good pension, good sources of income, good job, good business. And then to actually take their extra money after they have extra money and then buy property in the Belize, they're probably going to be doing okay. Or they just have the dream to retire there and own a vacation home there. And so maybe it is a stretch for them, but they're gonna do all they can to hold on to those properties because they're not going to let it go. If they had the desire to do it, they're going to try to find a way to make it work. So let me just scroll through any comments here on my YouTube feed. All right, good. Remote working. Steve's remote working from the USA. All right, good. Awesome. That's good. Hey, how are you? Good to see you. We have someone online who just purchased a nice piece of property. So good to see you. Yeah, so good. Awesome. Well, let me see. It's 5:30. Been going on for about a half hour now. Those are the main points I wanted to cover. Because again, a lot of people are asking about what's going on. So yeah, my local friends down there are staying safe and they're doing well. Let's hope this thing passes through quickly. So if you have any personal questions, any more questions outside of this, go ahead and feel free to email me. I think all of you have my email addresses. So go ahead and email me. And if you want to jump on a private one-on-one Zoom call, we can do that. But thanks a lot for attending today. Hope you're all doing well. Stay safe wherever you are. And we'll talk to everybody soon. Let's see. How do I end this one? How do I end it? Don't want to press that. Do I share it? Okay, I'm just trying to end it.